I meet with one of my clients. He's done everything that he was told to do. He stopped the acting out behavior. He installed the accountability software. He deleted his social media accounts. He's been going to recovery meetings for a year now. He can quote the green book. He can quote the blue book. He has identified his triggers. He can tell you with incredible precision exactly what his addiction cycle looked like and how it started. And his partner still doesn't trust him. And he's furious about it. He's furious because from his vantage point, he has changed. He stopped doing the acting out. And he read the books and he went to therapy and he learned the recovery vocabulary. He did the program. He finished the steps. She's still watching him. She's still asking questions. She's still not over it. And she still doesn't trust him. When I have a client like that, this is what I tell him. And it's the same thing I'm going to tell you today. Stopping the behavior is not the same thing as becoming a different person. You can stop doing something and remain exactly the same person who did it. Well, how is that possible? Because there are 4 different layers of change. And most recovery stops at layer 2. And then everyone wonders why the damage keeps happening and why trust never returns. I'm Roy. This is Joy Recovery Radio. Today we're going to talk about the 4 layers of change. What are they? Why most recovery stalls, and what real transformation actually requires.
Welcome to Joy Recovery Radio. In this space, we talk about betrayal, recovery, and relational harm through the lens of integrity, accountability, and trauma-informed care. Our goal is not to rush healing or prescribe outcomes, but to offer language, clarity, and grounded perspective. This podcast is educational, not therapeutic. You're invited to listen slowly, take what resonates, and leave the rest. Let's begin.
Most of what the recovery world calls quote-unquote recovery is the first 2 layers: understanding the problem and stopping the behavior. That's it. And because those 2 things are very visible and they're a lot of work, because they're things that you can point to and say, look, I did this. These are the kind of things that the recovery culture rewards. They give chips for this. 12-step programs measure this. Sponsors and your recovery brothers will celebrate this. Even therapists sometimes will stop at layer 2. And then the man relapses. Or there's a new form of secrecy that shows up. There's a new discovery. Or the betrayed partner keeps sensing that something is still off and she can't quite identify. And everyone's confused. But they really shouldn't be. Because if you only change the first 2 layers, you haven't changed the system internally that produced the behavior. You've just suspended it. Behavior can change temporarily, while the deeper patterns and system still remain. Here's why that matters. Because when stress returns, and trust me, stress will always return, then those deeper patterns, that system, which never changed, pulls the person back towards their default, what they know. It will pull them back towards compartmentalization, towards image management, towards entitlement, and yes, sometimes back towards acting out, or sometimes towards a new version of compulsive behavior. That's why we talk about pseudo recovery so much in this podcast and in the academy. Because pseudo recovery, fake recovery, is what you get when a man changes layers 1 and 2, but does not change layers 3 and 4. And everyone around him treats that like it's the finish line. So if you're listening to this podcast and you're not watching the video, I'm going to describe an image to you. Picture a pyramid, and it's got 4 layers. At the very bottom is the widest and easiest layer called insight. This is what you understand. It's foundational. Above it, the second layer is called behavior. This is what you stop doing. Those are the first 2 layers. Above that in the pyramid is a third layer that we're going to call emotional capacity. This is what you're able to tolerate. Finally, at the very top apex, the narrowest layer, the hardest layer, is identity, who you are becoming. Insight is at the bottom because it's the easiest. Identity transformation sits at the top because it's the hardest. Most men in recovery build the bottom 2 levels and then call it a house. But it's not a house. It's a foundation. And it's still missing a critical floor and a roof. Those are the 4 layers. Let's walk through each one of them. What it is, what it looks like, what happens when you stop. Layer 1, insight. The statement that goes with this layer is this: I understand the problem. This is where a lot of recovery begins. This is where it should begin. Insight is critical. It is foundational. Without insight, there won't be change. Insight includes things like learning about betrayal trauma, understanding the impact of your deception, recognizing your entitlement, seeing how your past behavior actually caused harm to others, being able to name what was happening in you and what was happening to your partner. Men at this layer often say things like, I finally get it. They have this epiphany. I see how much damage I've caused. I didn't realize how serious this was. And those statements can be real. They can be genuine. I'm not dismissing them. But here's what I need you to understand. Insight alone by itself does not change behavior, especially under stress. Many men understand their behavior long before they stop it. So insight is necessary, but insight is not enough. It's not sufficient. You can understand exactly what you were doing and keep doing it. In fact, some of the most articulate men that I've worked with are men who can thoroughly explain their behavior in clinical language better than a lot of clinicians. But at the same time, they were still actively running the system. Understanding does not equal change. But insight, understanding, it is the beginning of the possibility of change. So, partners, this is important for you because when a man becomes articulate about his behavior, when he becomes recovery fluent and he learns the language from the rooms and he begins to name his patterns and he even understands not only what he did, but some of the reasons for why he did it. When you start to see this, it's very easy to mistake that for true change, but it isn't. Insight is layer 1. And if that's where he stops, you are still not safe. Watch for what comes next. Watch for what doesn't come. So before we look at layer 2, I want to pause for a moment and just tell you about the Joy Recovery Academy. Everything we're talking about today, the 4 layers of change, pseudo recovery, the pathway for men that we call the 3 I's, the pathway for partners that we call the 3 S's. All of that and a lot more is taught in much greater depth than we go into in the podcast inside our academy. Twice a week, live teaching, but if you can't make the live teaching, you have full access to every video that can be replayed at your leisure. The academy is the educational foundation of our work. It's where you go to slow down, to get clarity, and to build the framework that you both need for real recovery. Okay, let's keep going. Layer 2 is behavior. So layer 1 was insight, understanding. I understand the behavior. Layer 2 is the actual behavior. And the statement that goes with this one is, I have stopped the behavior. So layer 1, insight, I understand the behavior. Layer 2, the actual behavior, I stopped it. This is what most of the recovery world calls sobriety, sexual sobriety. Stopping the pornography, ending the affairs, deleting secret accounts, closing down all contact with other partners, installing accountability software, all of the external, observable acts of elimination, of acting out. And please hear me, this is important. This is really important. This is critical. Recovery can't happen without you stopping the behavior. The deception has to end. The hidden behavior must stop. The acting out has to come to an end. That is layer 2. It is the absolute floor. Nothing above it is possible without it. But here's where so many men get stuck, and where so many programs of recovery stop. Behavior change is not character change. Behavior can change for a lot of reasons that have nothing to do with transformation. Your behavior can change because you got caught. It can change because of fear of consequences. It can change because your partner's watching you. It can change because you're being monitored. It can change because there's not the opportunity right now. What I'm saying is behavior can change temporarily while the deeper patterns still remain. This is also why relapse happens, or why new forms of deception begin to emerge. The behavior stopped, but the structure that produced the behavior did not. And when the conditions shift, when he's no longer being monitored, when the pressure of life increases, when shame surfaces, when the relationship feels stable enough that he lets down his guard, the old architecture is still in place, and it does what it was built to do. Sobriety is not safety. Sobriety is the starting point of the work. It's the baseline. It's the bare minimum. It's what we should have been doing all along. It's not the end of the work. So, betrayed partners, this is why your nervous system does not settle just because he stopped acting out. Your nervous system is waiting for evidence of layers 3 and 4. And until it has that evidence, your nervous system is doing exactly what it was designed to do, keeping you safe. Keeping you safe in an environment that has not proven itself to be safe. Layer 3, emotional capacity. The statement that goes with this layer is this: I can now tolerate difficult emotions. This is where most men hit a wall. This is also where pseudo recovery gets exposed, if you observe. What is emotional capacity? When a man has emotional capacity, he can stay present with things like shame. Shame still shows up for him, but he doesn't collapse. He doesn't deflect. He doesn't avoid or abandon. He can stay present with confrontation without getting defensive. He can stay present with the partner's pain without trying to fix it or minimize it or manage it or make it go away. He can tolerate difficult conversations that happen over and over and over again, and he doesn't get irritated. He doesn't get impatient. He doesn't have body language that says, why are we still doing this? That's emotional capacity. Without this capacity, men default back to their protective instincts, like anger or minimizing or shutting down, stonewalling, blame shifting. And he's going to say things like, I'm doing everything I can. Do you not see all the work that I'm doing? What more do you want from me? You're stuck. We need to move on. I know empathy is a buzzword in recovery circles. Every man wants to learn empathy. But let's clarify what real empathy is in the context of betrayal trauma. Real empathy is not what you say when the difficult subject comes up. Real empathy is how you behave the 100th time the subject comes up. It's whether you can hear the same question from the same place of her pain for the 3rd year in a row, and you stay regulated, you stay present, and you don't ask her why she isn't over this yet. That is emotional capacity. And most men in recovery don't have it when they begin this work. It has to be built. And building it is uncomfortable in a way that many men underestimate. Most men don't have a problem with physical labor and hard work, but what we're describing is emotional labor. And it's just as difficult and taxing as physical labor, but most men are averse to it. Emotional capacity is the layer where real recovery either becomes possible or it stalls. The reason I say that is because if you cannot develop the capacity to feel shame, which is still going to show up, without collapsing into self, or to experience confrontation without getting defensive, then here's what's going to happen, whether you're conscious about it or not. You are going to begin to construct an environment in which those feelings don't happen. What I mean is you'll begin to avoid those hard conversations. And you'll start managing your exposure to your partner's pain. You're going to go back to image management and compartmentalization. And that is the old system that is still rebuilding itself. So betrayed partners, this is what you're watching for. Emotional capacity. You're not asking whether he understands. You're really not even focusing on, has he stopped the behavior? Those are necessary. Those are givens. Those have to be there, but they're not enough. You're watching to see whether he can stay present with your pain over time without needing you to take care of his feelings. When he can do this, this is evidence of layer 3. When he can't do this, this is evidence that the work is not yet done. Regardless of what he understands, and regardless of the behavior no longer happening. The 4th and final layer is identity. This is character. The statement that goes with this one is, I am becoming a different kind of person. This is the deepest layer. Most recovery work never arrives here. At this layer, integrity is not something that you're trying to maintain. It has been integrated. It has become part of who you are. For example, transparency. It's no longer a discipline that you're forcing yourself to practice. It has become your default. I am simply
a transparent person. Or entitlement. Entitlement isn't a pattern that you're fighting against in the moment. It has been dismantled internally at the structural level, and you don't think that way anymore. So this layer of integrity, of identity and character, it involves a few things. First of all, dismantling all the entitlement beliefs. These are unspoken assumptions that you deserve something, that you're entitled to something, that you've earned it. Number two, identity work involves abandoning image management. This is the constant running calculation of how you're being perceived by other people. This is you trying to always manage how you present yourself and the impression others have about you. This fourth layer also involves aligning your values with your actual behavior. Instead of presenting one set of values while operating functionally in another set of values. And finally, this layer involves becoming internally consistent, which means the person you are in public, in private, with your partner, with your friends, or alone at midnight on a business trip, they're all the same person. In the Manwala model, this is called the DCSR, the Deceptive Compartmentalized Sexual Relational Reality, the secret sexual basement. This layer is the end of that basement. You could call it an architectural demolition. The basement and all the system that was involved in constructing it is no longer there for your behavior to return to. The basement no longer exists. That is layer 4. And here's the honest truth about this layer. Most men don't get there. And if they do get there, it's not quickly. Most men don't get here in the first year. Many men don't get here without sustained work across the first 3 layers, with real accountability, with the right kind of support, and especially with the willingness to face things about themselves that they have spent most of their life not facing. But that's okay. The goal is not to pretend to be there. The goal is to actually walk and work towards it. You cannot perform layer 4. You can't fake it. You can't use your recovery language to get into layer 4. You can only become it slowly through the sustained development of layers 1, 2, and 3 under real stress, over time, with consistency. For the betrayed partners, one of the most painful dynamics in betrayal recovery is this. The man in your life changes the first 2 layers. And sometimes this is very quick and highly visible. And everyone around you, including sometimes the professionals that you're paying, will treat this like the work is finished. And it isn't. And the thing is, your nervous system knows that it isn't finished. And that's why you can't settle. That's why the questions keep coming. That's why you're still hypervigilant. You are simply waiting for evidence of layers 3 and 4. Emotional capacity under pressure and identity level change over time. And you are not wrong to wait for that or to expect that. Your nervous system is doing exactly what nervous systems should do after betrayal trauma. It's observing and measuring the right thing. So here's what layers 3 and 4 look like. Here's evidence that layer 3 and 4 is happening so that you know what you're actually watching for. Can he hear the same painful question from you for the 500th time without showing irritation? Can he sit with your distress without trying to fix it or speed it up or redirect the conversation? Does he remain transparent when no one's checking? Is he proactive with his transparency, or are you still trying to have to dig for things? Does his behavior remain consistent, especially under stress? When the work is really hard, when he hasn't had enough sleep, when life pressure rises for him? Does he accept your boundaries or consequences without protesting them, including the consequence of the fact that you don't fully trust him yet? Is he reactive to that? And finally, has the man behind closed doors become the same man that he is in public? That's what you're watching for. That is what observable change looks like at layers 3 and 4. And that is not something you owe him the benefit of the doubt. That is something he must demonstrate to you consistently over months and years before you can even begin to consider trusting him. So you're not slow. You're not behind. You're not stuck. You're not being unfair. You're not refusing to forgive. You're not holding him back. You are simply correctly assessing whether the environment you're in has actually changed. So if I was to sum up this episode into one whole cohesive set of statements and bring it all together, this is what it is. This is the 4 layers. Layer 1, understanding the problem changes your thinking. Layer 2, stopping the behavior changes your actions. Layer 3, developing emotional capacity changes your reactions. And finally, changing your character changes your life. That is the difference between simply managing behavior and actually becoming trustworthy. Most recovery stops at managing behavior. Most relationships that I've seen that limp along after betrayal are living with a man who changed layers 1 and 2 and then stopped. Most partners who never fully settle are correctly sensing that layers 3 and 4 haven't happened. So men, if you listen to this and you're now realizing that you've only done the first 2 layers, well, let me tell you what the wrong response is. Don't go into shame. Don't despair. Don't give up. You've done the first 2 layers, and that is real. It was necessary. We don't want to discount that. In fact, it was probably what your program or your therapist or your sponsor told you to do. Just understand today, it's not enough. The next 2 layers are the harder work. They're going to take longer, and they don't announce themselves. And these 2 layers aren't going to make you feel like you've arrived, like the first 2 did. And that's okay. The goal is not to feel like you've arrived. The goal is to actually become the man that you've been pretending to be all along. That is the work. Betrayed partners, keep observing him. Trust your nervous system. You're not looking for what he says. You're looking for what he becomes. And you're allowed to take as long as that takes. If this teaching resonated with you, come find us at joy-recovery.com. The Academy is open. The resource library in our Academy is growing every week. And this work is worth you doing right and carefully. I'm Roy. Thanks for listening to Joy Recovery Radio. See you next time.
Thank you for listening to Joy Recovery Radio. If today's episode was helpful, You can find additional educational resources and information about the Joy Recovery Academy and our private coaching at joy-recovery.com. Remember, joy is possible when you live in integrity.